and welcome to the Dynamic Duel podcast, a weekly show where we review superhero films and debate the superiority between Marvel and DC by comparing their characters in stat-based battle simulations. I'm Johnny DC.
And I'm his twin brother, Marvelous Joe.
And this is our 98th episode.
Holy shit, it's getting
Only
close.
2 more. It's real. It's feeling real now. Only 2 more episodes until our 100th episode, at which point we will have something cool planned.
It'll be an awesome episode. Just look forward to it.
Yeah, and we have a few surprises. But this episode is a duel episode. We are pitting Mera versus Invisible Woman.
It should be a great match. We decided to do this particular duel now because of the upcoming Aquaman movie.
Right.
And this is kind of counting down to that. The movie just looks like it's going to be incredible.
Yeah, one of the news items that we'll be talking about is the final trailer for the film, which we'll get to it.
Yeah, I mean, for a DC movie, looks pretty good.
Whatever. It looks fantastic. There's another trailer that also dropped. It's the first Once Upon a Deadpool trailer. Mm-hmm. We'll be talking about that before the Aquaman trailer. We'll have all of the chapter times in the episode description.
Yeah, so you could skip around if you want.
Right.
Special thank you to Darian Sykes, who left us an iTunes review. As you guys know, we've been asking for iTunes ratings for what seems like forever. We're at 45 ratings right now, which is, almost a quarter of the way there to our 200 ratings goal, at which point we get to be critics on Rotten Tomatoes and have our reviews counted toward all the Marvel and DC films that we review. So, if you guys could help us out with that, that would be fantastic. But special thanks to Darian Sykes specifically for leaving that review. You don't have to leave a review. All we ask for is a rating, but reviews are appreciated, so thank you.
For sure.
And speaking of no prizes,
that is going to make no sense for people just starting the show.
All right, on to the no prize.
There we go.
So a no prize is an award that Marvel used to give out up until the 90s to fans. Our version, the Dynamic Duel No Prize, is a digital award that we post on social media that Jonathan personally draws for those who we feel gave the best answer to our question of the week. Last week's question was, what was your favorite all-time Stan Lee cameo and why? And this was right off the news of Stan Lee's passing. And still reeling from that one. It's sad, but it's really cool to see how you guys have all enjoyed his work over the years. So first honorable mention goes to John Spees from the Blast from Our Past podcast, who gave the answer Mallrats. That was a popular answer, and that was really such a fantastic cameo.
That was,
I really like how he's like, yeah, your friend Brody there kind of has an obsession with superhero genitalia.
Superhero sex organs.
Yeah. That was fantastic.
Yeah.
Adam Spees, also from the Blast from Our Past podcast, gave the answer Deadpool, which is not surprising because he's a huge Deadpool fan. But I like his answer. I'll read it specifically out loud just because it made me laugh. He said, I gotta go with Deadpool. Seeing Stan as the DJ at a strip club got me so hard that I immediately went to the closest strip club and lost my erection when I only found naked women in sight and no Stan Lee. That was a fantastic answer.
That's a great answer.
Again, you can listen to those guys on the Blast from Our Past podcast. They are hilarious.
You can get more of that.
Yeah. Another honorable mention goes to Tim Brown, who gave the answer Mallrats, and Joel Seagrave, who gave the answer Mallrats and Deadpool. So he gave both of the Spees brothers answers. Honorable mention also goes to Barbara, who gave the answer Teen Titans Go to the Movies. And we didn't talk about that cameo when we reviewed that film, but it was pretty hilarious.
It was great. I just love it when he's like, hey, it's me and my Stan Lee cameo. And then someone whispers in his ear, oh, geez, this is a DC movie? Oh, I got to get out of here. And he actually appears later on in the film when the Teen Titans are running away from all the charging DC superheroes. He just jumps on their golf cart and he's like, I don't care if this is a DC movie. I love cameos. And Robin's like, beat it, Stan Lee. And he goes tumbling off the golf cart and he's like, Excelsior. It was a great cameo.
That was fantastic. It was a funny one. Let's see. Josh Padgett gave the answer Spider-Man Homecoming and said that he felt that that's probably what Stan is doing up in heaven right now, is just, chatting with his neighbors outside of his window. And yeah, that was a really fantastic one. He was like, don't make me come down there, you punk.
I always
he's so funny.
Rude Stan Lee is my favorite Stan Lee. I know he's a huge sweetheart. He's a really, really nice guy. Everyone says that. Yeah. So for him to go counter and just be rude, I love that.
Yeah. Marjorie, how's your mother? All right. And Harrison Fox gets the last honorable mention for this question. And he gave 2 answers. One of them was Spider-Man 3, when he told Peter Parker, you know what? maybe one man can make a difference.
I barely remember that cameo. Honestly.
It was a good one. It was one of my favorites of his for a really long time. But my favorite after that movie came out was probably Harrison Fox's second answer, which was Guardians of the Galaxy 2, in which he played the informant to the Watchers.
Yeah, that was cool.
And I really like that one because it kind of made me think like, well, how is this character of Stan Lee? I think he's playing himself, but he's also conversing with these cosmic beings. And I was kind of hoping in my head that maybe it turned out that Stan was like an elder of the Marvel Universe, and that he was kind of like this all-powerful being, and that's how he was able to, show up in so many different universes and stories and stuff like that. Because, you have the Grandmaster, you have the Collector.
Right.
And in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, Star-Lord's dad, Ego, his human form character was kind of based off of an elder of the universe in the Marvel Comics called the Gardener. So they have all these different elders. Huh. And I was kind of hoping that maybe one day Marvel might immortalize Stan Lee as, a fictional elder of the universe called the Storyteller or something like that.
In the comics or in
both
the movies?
Yeah. That was just an idea that I was toying around with. And that's kind of how I see Stan now, as the Storyteller.
That's cool. Yeah. That's cool.
But our winner of the Dynamic Duel No Prize for this episode goes to Jeremy Orr, who gave 2 answers. One of them was X-Men Age of Apocalypse, which was not a great film, but it was a touching cameo because he was holding on to his wife at the time.
Yeah, his real wife.
Yeah, who passed shortly after that movie came out a few months later. But the other answer that he gave, and that's really the answer we're going with for this prize, was The Simpsons. Because I fucking loved that cameo so much. And I just remember him trying to turn into the Hulk, and he's like pulling on his shirt and it's not working. And he's like, it happened once before. But what I really especially like about it is how obsessed he was in replacing DC characters with Marvel.
Yeah, in Comic Book Guy's comic book store, there would be like a Superman comic, and Stan Lee would put like an X-Men comic in front of it.
Yeah, and that one time he went up to the kid who was looking at the Batman action figure, and he was like, hey, kid, you don't need Batman. Why don't you get an exciting action figure like The Thing?
And the kid's like, but Batman's the only one that fits in the Batmobile.
And he's like, no, The Thing will fit in there just fine, see? And he like smashes his Batmobile, and the kid's like, you broke it. And Stan's like, broke it or made it better? It was so great. I loved it so much.
And he also had like sort of an important message to Bart Simpson in that cameo where he's like, just keep trying, essentially.
Right.
He's like, oh, my Spidey sense is going off. And Bart's like, really? He's like, did I say Spidey sense? I meant my stinky sense. This is awful.
Yeah, and he's like, and if you can't make it as a writer, you could always just end up running a comic book store. And Comic Book Guy is like, I think he just insulted me. But in Bizarro World, that means he likes me. That was great.
It was fantastic.
Yeah.
I'm going to miss Stan Lee. I'm going to miss his cameos for sure.
Yeah, we're all going to miss him. But congrats again to Jeremy Orr for winning this episode's No Prize. And if you want to win a No Prize, go ahead and stay tuned to later on this episode when we ask another question of the week. With that out of the way,
on to the news.
All right, so Once Upon a Deadpool, we learned a few weeks ago, is a limited engagement in theaters running for only 12 days from December 12th to December 24th.
Yeah, 12 days of Deadpool.
Yeah, we finally got the first trailer for it, and it actually... I liked it a lot more than maybe I wanted to. I'm still a little ambivalent toward this whole project because it feels like a cash grab, but it's also an experiment on behalf of Disney, most likely, to see how big of a draw a PG-13 Deadpool can get.
Right. I'm wondering if this whole idea was, Ryan Reynolds to try and survive the transition from Fox to Disney.
Yeah, possibly. But it looks really hilarious, like so much so that I have to say that I'm most likely a convert. I mean,
really?
Whereas before I was probably on the fence as to whether or not I was going to see this, I'm probably going to make an effort within those 12 days to actually go see this film.
Yeah, why not? I mean, proceeds go to charity. It goes to a good cause.
Yeah, fuck cancer.
Yeah.
Is the charity that the movie's proceeds are going to. And it looks like a good time. The trailer starts off with like this very Christmassy, soft snowfall that's going on.
Yeah, and the Deadpool logo is like on the snowflakes.
Right, yeah. And the voiceover work really impressed me, actually, because when Ryan Reynolds started speaking, I actually thought it was that voiceover guy from the 90s, who used to do all the voiceover stuff for these Christmas films like the Santa Claus and stuff like that. It was such a great impression. I was impressed. He switches over to his friend Fred, who's sitting in bed, Fred Savage, similar to the Princess Bride's like framed narrative.
Yeah.
And Deadpool's like, you like are the epitome of like childhood innocence, And this was
like, I'm a man.
He's like, this is what the PG-13 Deadpool is all about. I need you and you need me. And Fred's like, I don't need you, though. And he's like, you need me to untie you.
Just seeing his like legs duct taped to the bed. That was hilarious.
Yeah. The trailer itself is not too long, actually. And there are only a few clips of what might be new. But there was a great moment where it's actually a Disney moment where they're referencing a Disney film. And he's talking to this old couple on a park bench. And he's like, you remind me of the guy from Up. He's like, excuse me? And he's like, don't get too attached. Referencing the horribly tragic opening to the movie Up where, the guy loses his wife to old age. But he's like holding a gun and he's wearing a hoodie and stuff like that. It's just a fascinatingly bizarre scenario that I can't wait to see what the actual context is of this. It's supposed to be like a half-hour additional footage to kind of fill in the gaps that they're cutting from the film.
I think it's a little bit less than that.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
The ending joke to this freaking floored me, though. I was dying with laughter because Fred Savage was like, I prefer Marvel films. And Deadpool's like, we are Marvel. And he's like, Marvel licensed by Fox. It's like the Beatles being produced by Nickelback. It's music, but it sucks. He was like, yeah, you were so much nicer as a kid. It looks really funny. It looks like a good time.
Do you think we're going to review it?
Oh, there's like no space in the schedule to review the movie. And considering it's pretty much the same movie except for 30 minutes spliced in, we will most likely just dedicate like a news event toward it and not review the film itself.
And we've mentioned that before, but I just wanted to see if you had changed your mind after seeing this first trailer.
That's what we did for the unrated cut of Suicide Squad, Yeah. There was a lot of extra footage in that, and we didn't review the film because ultimately it didn't change it.
No.
I guess it all depends on if the changes here turn it into a drastically different film, then we will possibly consider it.
Oh, with only 30 minutes, probably not.
Possibly not. You never know. But yeah, so moving on to Aquaman news.
Yeah, so this is the final trailer. And it was kind of released to announce like that tickets are on sale. And yes, I do have my tickets. Actually, we're going to an early screening. We're going to see it a week early.
Well, yeah, and you guys, if any listeners here are members of Amazon Prime, if you go onto Atom Tickets, I think it is, and you have an Amazon Prime account, you can actually find advanced screenings like up to a week in advance in your local area. So be sure to do that.
Yeah. See it a week early. See it a week early. See it the day it comes out. See it a whole bunch of times that weekend. It's going to be awesome. I know. That's what I'm going to do. Because this trailer is phenomenal.
Yeah, it was pretty damn amazing.
Just from the opening shot, it's so unlike anything I've ever seen in a superhero film.
Well, the undersea world that they have created definitely feels like a whole different world. And, we haven't had a whole lot of superhero films that have taken place in that otherworldly environment so far.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, like outside of like Guardians of the Galaxy or something like that. But this looks unique.
Right. Yeah. So the trailer starts off, with this voiceover of Queen Atlanta and Nicole Kidman kind of talking with her baby, the young Arthur Curry.
Right.
And it's kind of cool. She has that like little fork for a trident.
Yeah, and she's talking about how one day someone's going to come and rebuild Atlantis using the trident.
Right, which is interesting.
Especially with that shot where you see Atlantis above the water and it's like rebuilding itself.
Yeah. What intrigues me about that line is, why does she want Atlantis rebuilt? Does she mean like it raised above the oceans again? Or does she mean like all the different seven kingdoms to be united? Both of those things are things that it looks like Orm, the Ocean Master, is trying to do in this film.
Right.
So I wonder if she's still alive in this film and she's kind of like working Orm behind the scenes. That's just my speculation.
That's a weird... I don't think that'll be the case.
You don't think that'll be the case? Because he's her son as well.
Right. Orm.
Right, yeah.
You think Queen Atlanta is going to turn out to be bad in this movie?
She kind of did in the comics.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, so there's precedence.
Interesting.
Just pulling that out of nowhere.
Okay.
I wonder if that's a spoiler. Hopefully I just didn't ruin the movie for everyone. I don't know if that's how it's going to be, but that's just my speculation.
Interesting.
And then we get to see Arthur Curry and Mera on these cliff sides, and they flash back to when Volko was training Arthur. And they definitely did some de-aging on Willem Dafoe for that scene.
Oh, did they?
Yeah, for sure. But it's kind of nice how they kind of explain how Aquaman has like these enhanced senses, these abilities that we know he has from the comics as comic readers, but the general public probably has no idea about.
It's a great way to visualize it,
It's yeah.
Like his eyes kind of went saturated like a gold color, and then all of a sudden like Atlantis lit up very like fluorescent kind of. It's amazing.
Right. Yeah, it's really cool. But you see a lot of shots that were in the extended video, that long 5-minute one that Warner Brothers released like a month ago.
Yeah.
I'm not surprised, but I'm really glad that they did that because You know, a lot of the general movie-going populace probably didn't see that extended video. It was probably an internet-only audience.
Yeah, I don't think they played it in front of other movies in theaters.
No, they didn't. But some of the new shots we do get is a look at Ocean Master for the very first time, like in full costume.
Yeah.
And he looks so badass.
He looks really cool. They did a great job on the costume design in this movie.
It looks, this whole movie, I've said this before, it looks so expensive.
And it also looks very true to the comics.
Looks like it came straight from the Jeff Johns run of Aquaman. This, like, better win all the Oscars for costume. There's only one costume Oscar, but it better win that Oscar because the costuming in this is just phenomenal.
Yeah. You know what else is phenomenal? The music.
The music really stands out in this.
Is this the actual Aquaman theme that's going to be used in the film, do you think?
I would think so because it is the final trailer.
And I've never heard it before either.
Right, exactly. It is really epic. It really gets me pumped, especially like towards the end.
It might be the best thing about this whole trailer. I mean, as incredible as the visuals are and everything like that, there's just something about the music that drives you and kind of like makes you want to stand up and cheer at what you're seeing.
Absolutely, absolutely. But this trailer delivers a great sense of the stakes about, Orm raising Atlantis and uniting everyone. I love the scene where Willem Dafoe's like, we need this. And he like unveils this like blueprint that has the trident. And Arthur's like, already got one of those. Because I always thought the same thing. I'm like, he already has the trident. I thought that from the Justice League film.
Yeah, it's a special trident.
Right. And we'll just see how special. We get a few more shots of the gladiatorial battle that's happening underwater.
Yeah, there are like great little moments there.
Yeah, they're like hurtling like lava rocks and stuff like that. That's going to be a cool scene.
I like the bullet time part where Aquaman is swinging the trident and Orm just barely dips below it and it's like barely going over his face in slow motion. That was a neat little effect because you saw the drag from the water going over his face and everything like that. Really well done. I have to say that as a Marvel fan, I'm kind of jealous as hell. Like, I want a Namor movie to be this good, and now I'm unsure of when we'll ever get a Namor film.
Yeah, I kind of feel bad for you too. Because, how are they possibly going to top an Atlantis that looks as cool as this one does?
Right?
You have lava, you have like this like bioluminescence.
You have all these like sea creatures.
Yeah, like the huge like kraken that they show at the end of this battle.
Yeah.
Those look awesome.
Just looks incredible.
It's going to be so epic. The last shot of this trailer is the same last shot that we had of the extended video, which shows Aquaman in his classic suit with the trident.
Yes.
So,
is that a spoiler?
That's what I'm wondering. They're saying we have to find this trident. That's the story that they've set up for this trailer. And the last shot is of him holding the trident.
But that's not when the movie ends. He still has to use it. And there's still the question of whether or not he uses the trident effectively and stuff like that. I mean, we all know that he's going to save the day in the end and become king of Atlantis.
Yeah.
I don't think it's necessarily as big of a spoiler as
probably not.
You think it is.
Probably not. I'm just wondering, like, at what point in the film does this take place? I always kind of hope that they never show me anything from the third act, and I'm really hoping that this is not from that point.
You would have to think that the huge epic battle between the large sea monsters is going to be from the third act. Because
that's true.
How could you possibly top that?
That's true. That's very true. So that's going to be cool. I cannot wait. Oh my gosh.
All right, okay, real quick. All right, so if you guys have listened to this podcast for a while,
oh gosh,
you know how excited Jonathan gets before every DC movie. He just thinks that it's going to be the greatest movie of all time and that it's going to win all the Oscars and he's going to love it forever.
Yeah.
And then when it comes to reviewing those films, he's always like depressed, So what I tell Jonathan before he sees every DC movie is to check his expectations. So let's all say it together. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Jonathan, check your expectations.
How can I? How can I possibly do that? I don't know. I don't think it's possible. This is fucking Aquaman. This is awesome.
Check your expectations. It might not be nearly as good as you think it is. It might be
better. It might be better.
It might be better.
I mean, the early reactions are that it's really good.
Yeah. Well, that's good. But I've heard that before, so.
No, whatever. One of my biggest takeaways from this trailer is just how cool the villains look. Ocean Master looks so silvery and like badass, sleek, and Black Manta looks sleek as well.
Yeah.
We see, more shots of him like we saw from the extended video, just trying to track down and take out Aquaman in that like old city, but they just look so cool. And this brings us to our question of the week. In your opinion, who is the coolest looking villain in a Marvel or DC film? Post your answer to our Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, or email us at dynamicduelpodcast@gmail.com. We'll pick our favorite answer and draw that person a Dynamic Duel No Prize that we'll post to social media.
Yeah, I'm excited to see what answers we get for this one. There's no right answer because there have been a ton of cool looking supervillains, but we want to know what your opinion is and see if you could convince us of that. So that does it for all the news this episode. Let's go ahead and get into our duel, where we find out who would win in a fight between Mera and Invisible Woman.
All right, Mera versus Invisible Woman. Again, we're doing this as a lead up to the Aquaman review,
That
which
comes out next month.
is the end of next month, so it's it's a long lead up. But I knew I wanted to do Mera because we've already done Aquaman, and Mera, she's Aquaman's right hand woman.
Yeah, and she's going to have a huge part in the Aquaman film.
Yeah, it looks that way.
Yeah, and I wanted to do Invisible Woman because I think she has a comparable power set and that they both kind of generate constructs, albeit out of different substances and everything like that.
Right.
But it's been how many episodes now, and I haven't done a member of the Fantastic Four. And I love the Fantastic Four from the comics, not necessarily the movies. And I think it's way past due time that I did one of these characters. And I'm really excited to start off with Invisible Woman.
Yeah, I think it's a good matchup. I know Invisible Woman is like a huge defensive powerhouse.
Yeah. Offensive, too.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. This is going to be a good match. We're going to see where this is going to go, but I think it's a good pairing. So if you haven't listened to one of our duel episodes before, the way we do this is through statistics because we are both incredibly biased.
Right.
And stats is the only way to do this.
Yeah, you got to approach it scientifically.
And objectively.
Right, exactly. So what we do is we take those statistics and we plug them into a probabilistic model known as the Monte Carlo method, which basically plots these numbers along a bell curve, along a standard deviation. That accounts for the variables that you would find in the course of battle. And we run simulations on this probabilistic model 1,000 times.
Right.
And that gives us a percentage of wins for each character. Now, no character ever wins 100% of the times, which I think is a great example of how oftentimes in comics that you read, you'll find, Batman occasionally beating Superman and stuff like that.
Exactly.
So it's always a toss-up, but sometimes the odds tend to favor one character over the other, and we declare that character the winner.
Right. And the stats that we do compile, we take from the official Marvel Power Rankings, from which we extrapolate the DC stats, and we add a few more, depending on the battle, just to make it a more robust simulation.
Right, exactly. So no fan votes, no uncharacteristic feats of strength, just the stats and the simulations. So before we get into running the math on that, though, what we'd like to do is we go into each character's history and background, and then we'd like to discuss how we think one of these 1,000 matches would play out in a speculative scenario.
Right, and the results aren't based on that speculation. It's just something fun to do and for us to argue.
Right.
So, who goes first? I think you go first with
Yeah.
Invisible Woman this episode.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and get into the background of Sue Storm. So Sue really started out in the 1960s as not the greatest female character, in my opinion. She was very often a damsel in distress, very emotional, and her relationship with Reed Richards, Mr. Fantastic, was very traditional, I guess. She was pretty subservient for a long time. Marvel retconned some of her history to empower her more as a smart, strong woman who was less reliant on Reed, such as changing her early career as a model to a scientist.
Oh, I always thought she was a scientist.
Yeah, I think she's all the better for it, and in the past few decades, she's really grown as a character in her relationships and as a woman who's not only super powerful, but also a kind and loving mother and a very patient wife. Not many other women superheroes can say that, and I think she provides a unique and interesting perspective to the superhero comics world. Susan Storm and her brother Johnny were born and raised in Long Island, New York. When their mother was gravely injured in a car accident, their father, a doctor named Franklin Storm, tried to save her but was unsuccessful. Despondent, he turned to heavy drinking and gambled away the family fortune, ending up in prison after murdering his loan shark.
Oh, jeez.
Susan had to take on a more maternal role and care for her brother Johnny as they were sent to live with their aunt in her boarding house. It was here where, in her late teens, Sue first encountered and became infatuated with Reed Richards, who at the time was attending graduate school at Empire State University. She eventually moved to California where she earned her doctorate, and she ran into Reed again, who in turn fell for Sue and the beautiful, smart woman she had become. At the time, Reed was working on an experimental spaceship for which he built a prototype but had lost government funding for. Determined that a successful test of the prototype would attract more funding, Reed decided to launch the ship into space along with his pilot friend Benjamin Grimm, Sue, and Johnny serving as the crew. During the mission, the ship was bombarded by a storm of cosmic radiation enhanced by a chance solar flare. They were forced back into Earth's atmosphere and crash landed. All survived. However, they discovered upon leaving the wreckage that the radiation had mutated them with superhuman abilities. Susan disappeared into thin air, and the team panicked that she was killed in the crash, but learned that she had gained the power to turn invisible. She called herself the Invisible Girl, later Woman. Johnny's body burst into flame. He became the Human Torch. Ben's skin turned into rock, calling himself the Thing, and Reed became elastic and malleable, calling himself Mr. Fantastic.
He would.
Bonded through this tragic incident into a strong family unit, together they called themselves the Fantastic Four. They were apprehended by the government and placed into a quarantine facility. However, Reed was able to convince officials to let the team operate freely after they proved themselves by defending the base from a rampaging monster and solving a case of missing nuclear reactors. Reed rented the top 4 floors of New York's Baxter Building to research their developing powers. Susan was often the glue that held the Fantastic Four together, resolving their squabbles and providing emotional support. In their early adventures, her power of invisibility was oftentimes useless, especially in battle. She was discontent in her role on the team, which was often the damsel in distress against villains like Mole Man and Dr. Doom. This frustration with her situation possibly led to her attraction to Namor the Submariner, whom you can learn more about in our Duel episode where he fought against Aquaman. However, this attraction ended when Namor kidnapped her to be his queen under the sea, and Reed, Johnny, and Ben traveled down to Atlantis to rescue her. Reed eventually proposed, and she accepted. Nearly every hero in the Marvel Universe was invited to and attended their wedding, though Dr. Doom sought to sabotage it by using a negative emotion charging device to get nearly every Marvel villain to attack the service. In an epic fight, all the present heroes were able to defend against the villains, and Reed used a time displacement device to send the criminals away so he and Sue could get married in peace. They had their honeymoon on the moon.
Oh, that's cool.
She eventually discovered new powers where she could turn other objects invisible and create force fields. They proved particularly useful in defending herself and the team from villains like El Diablo, the Super Skrull, and the Frightful Four, but especially from the cosmic being known as Galactus and his herald, the Silver Surfer. Sue was instrumental in holding the World Devourer's machines back, as Johnny obtained the ultimate nullifier for Reed to threaten Galactus with. After a few other adventures discovering new worlds in the Negative Zone dimension and new heroes in the Black Panther and the Inhumans, Sue and Reed made their greatest discovery yet, that Sue was pregnant with their first child. Crystal of the Inhumans subbed in on the Fantastic Four while Sue was out of commission, and when the pregnancy came to term, the team learned that the cosmic radiation that had given them their powers were having adverse effects on Sue and the child. Reed learned that a power source in the Negative Zone could save them both, so he, Ben, and Johnny went in and stole Annihilus's cosmic control rod. Reed used it to save Sue's and the baby's life, and she gave birth to their son, Franklin Richards. The child exhibited vast psychic and reality warping potential from the moment he was born. When Annihilus stole back his cosmic control rod, he kidnapped baby Franklin and triggered his powers, turning him into a psychic bomb capable of destroying all life in our solar system.
What?
Reed had to turn off Franklin's higher brain functions to save Earth, a decision that angered Sue, who then left the team with her child. It wasn't long until Franklin's brain was restored, however, and the Fantastic Four reunited. She became pregnant again during a trip to the Negative Zone, but the daughter was stillborn. In her grief and fragile mental state, a villain named Psycho Man enhanced her negative emotions, turning Sue into a villain named Malice. She attacked the Fantastic Four, but Reed was able to pull her out of her darkness and back to normal. Reed later disappeared into the time stream, and Sue took over as team leader, bringing Ant-Man on as a replacement. It was during this time she really grew in confidence, which Reed noticed upon his return. She used this newfound poise in the battle against Onslaught to sacrifice herself to save the world along with the rest of the team. Thankfully, her son Franklin saved all the heroes in a pocket universe he created and was able to bring everyone back to the proper reality. A short while later, Franklin also revealed that he rescued his stillborn sister's mind and projected it into an alternate reality where she was named Valeria and raised by an alternate version of Sue and a heroic Dr. Doom. As an effect of defeating a cosmic villain known as Abraxas, Valeria was restored to her previous state as an unborn child in Sue's womb and was born shortly after. The Civil War event divided the team, with Reed joining the pro-registration side and Sue and Johnny joining the anti-registration side. Ben was neutral, not wanting to register but not wanting to fight the government, so he ended up moving to France. In the end battle between sides, however, Reed took a bullet for Sue, and the team ended up reconciling. The Fantastic Four refocused and reformed, calling themselves the Future Foundation, where the team, Sue's children, and a group of scientists joined together to find scientific solutions to the world's problems. It was they who created a life raft to survive the end of the multiverse during the Secret Wars event, and at the end of that event, Reed was granted the powers of omnipotent beings called the Beyonders to reform the multiverse alongside Sue and their kids. Afterward, they all rejoined their native reality. And that's pretty much her history. Powers-wise, as the Invisible Woman, Sue can manipulate ambient cosmic energies around her to produce solid energy fields within her proximity that bend light and render things invisible. This includes herself, as well as solid force field constructs. The invisibility effect applies not just to visible light, but all wavelengths across the electromagnetic spectrum, meaning infrared, ultraviolet, and X-ray vision aren't able to detect her. The force field constructs that she creates are typically spherical and can range in size from a marble to a hollow 3-mile dome. Through concentration, she can change the shape of the force fields into whatever form she wills. She also has spatial control of these fields, able to psionically move them however she wants. She's like a Green Lantern if Green Lantern never saw his constructs.
That's weird.
These abilities let her travel through the air, such as on a floating platform, and they could defend against psychic attacks, both telepathic and telekinetic. She can also use the fields offensively to various degrees, from shockwaves to deadly projectiles. And those are her powers.
It was really interesting when you were mentioning early on in her career when she felt like useless to the team.
Right.
Because I think that feeling is one that's been shared by Mera and Aquaman.
Really?
Because, you know, the rest of the world and the rest of the superhero community kind of see them as useless. And I think that really angers Mera.
Yeah.
Because, you know, she knows that she's this formidable warrior.
Uh-huh.
So.
Yeah, but it's hard for other people to see how she could use that outside of the water.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah. But she can. And I'll get into her backstory.
Okay.
Mera is the wife of Aquaman and the queen of Atlantis, though she's from an interdimensional penal colony called Zebul, which is located within the Bermuda Triangle. Her ancestors rebelled against ancient Atlantis and were imprisoned within the Triangle, where they formed their own monarchy. Mera was born a princess of Zebul, where she lived until she was forced to flee when Zebul's monarchy was being overthrown by a villain known as Lyron. Managing to breach the dimensional barrier, Mera ran into Aquaman and his sidekick Aqualad in the open water, and they vowed to help her. Lyron managed to capture the three of them, however, and imprisoned them in Zebul. Aquaman managed to break free, defeat Lyron, and rescue Mera, who decided to return to Atlantis with him. They got married soon after and had a baby named Arthur Jr., which was pretty unique for superheroes in the Silver Age of comics. Only a couple years later, however, the villain Black Manta kidnapped Arthur Jr. and placed him in a poisonous chamber designed to slowly suffocate him. Mera raced back to Zebul to retrieve a healing device that could save her son, but she had to fight Lyron in order to learn of the device's whereabouts. She successfully retrieved the device and returned to our world to save her son, but she was too late. Arthur Jr. had died.
It's messed up. The kid was kind of murdered in a brutal fashion.
Yeah, he was. You can learn more about that in our Black Manta versus Black Panther episode.
Yeah.
So devastated at the loss of her son, Mera suffered a mental breakdown, and though she and Aquaman tried to salvage their relationship, he ultimately left Atlantis to reform the Justice League in Detroit, and one of Atlantis' interim rulers, Lord Wexus, had Mera committed to an asylum in Atlantis.
Dang.
When Atlantis was invaded by an alien force of giant jellyfish, Aquaman returned to protect his kingdom and freed Mera. But she savagely attacked him when he freed her, and while he tried to defend himself, he accidentally pushed her too hard and she was impaled on a protruding piece of metal.
Dang.
She survived thanks to her slightly differing physiology, but she left Atlantis to return to Zebul. She was captured, however, by the Aquaman villain Thanatos, and taken to his hellish dimension called Netherworld. She was brainwashed and gave birth to another son, whom she named AJ. It's never been revealed whether the father was Thanatos or Aquaman, but she eventually escaped Netherworld and returned to Earth, where AJ aged rapidly.
Does AJ stand for Arthur Jr.?
We don't know.
Okay.
To stem his rapid aging on our planet, Aquaman and Mera traveled to a water planet named Oceanid, where AJ stayed to serve as that planet's protector. Mera and Aquaman reconciled and served once again as rulers of Atlantis. When Tempest, formerly known as Aqualad, sent Atlantis into the past during a time in its history known as the Obsidian Age when it was still above water, Mera helped her citizens cope with being enslaved by the Atlanteans of the past. Atlantis was restored to the present timeline, but was eventually destroyed by the Spectre when he attempted to remove all magic from the world. Atlantis' remains were taken over by dark magic practitioners, and with Aquaman dead at the time, Mera led a rebellion to take back the kingdom. During the events of Blackest Night, Aquaman returned from the dead as a Black Lantern zombie and attacked Mera, taunting her with their zombie baby, Arthur Jr.
Damn!
Enraged, Mera acquired a Red Lantern ring of rage and almost killed zombie Aquaman, but was stopped by Wonder Woman. After Necron, the being responsible for Blackest Night, was destroyed, Aquaman was restored to life, and upon seeing him alive, Mera's connection to the Red Ring was severed. But when that happens, the former Red Lantern goes into cardiac arrest.
Oh no.
Luckily, Mera was resuscitated and was reunited with her husband. Soon after, Mera and Aquaman were attacked by a Zebel assassin named Siren, who was revealed to be Mera's sister. Mera was forced to reveal the truth to Aquaman, that she too was an assassin. Zebel never forgave Atlantis for banishing them, so they came up with a plan to train their princesses to be deadly assassins who would one day infiltrate Atlantis and seduce and kill the Atlantean king in retaliation for their exile. Mera, however, fell in love with Arthur and couldn't follow through with the plan, making herself an exile from her own people. She also revealed that she shared the responsibility for Black Manta's hatred, as her family had a long-standing feud with the villain when he couldn't get access to Zebel's powerful artifacts. Her emotional instability over the years was brought about by the fact that she couldn't tell her husband Aquaman, who had all this time blamed herself for the death of their son, that she felt she was the reason for what happened. Further revelations were made in the New 52, when the corpse of Atlantis' first king was magically resurrected. During his reign, the now dead king was betrayed by his brother, Aquaman's ancestor, and a civil war broke out over the legitimacy to the throne. The Zebelians had been exiled due to the recognition of the first king's sovereignty, and were still loyal to him thousands of years later. The dead king kidnapped Mera upon his initial resurrection and dragged her to the Bermuda Triangle to open the barrier to Zebel, where its inhabitants, including Zebel's new king Nereus, bowed to the dead king and together took over Atlantis. King Nereus, to whom Mera was betrothed, was furious to learn that Mera had married Aquaman, and she was imprisoned after refusing to marry Nereus and threatening to kill him. She and the Atlanteans were freed by Aquaman, and she helped him defeat the Dead King and the Zebel invasion, making the decision once again to remain in Atlantis at Aquaman's side. During a recent disappearance of Aquaman, Mera assumed full royal command of Atlantis and accepted an invitation to join the Justice League in Aquaman's place. Powers-wise, Mera has hydrokinesis, allowing her to psionically control water and alter its density, making her able to create hard water constructs, such as armor or weapons. While on land, she can gather water from the air, from nearby water sources, or either from other people's bodies, instantly dehydrating them. Given her Atlantean physiology, she has enhanced durability and senses adapted to living on the ocean floor, which also grants her enhanced lifting strength of around 50 tons. She's an apt leader, having led kingdoms and armies, and she's a skilled, lethal fighter, having received extensive training since childhood. As an Atlantean, she also has a limited form of telepathy.
She can communicate with underwater sea life like Aquaman can?
Not with underwater sea life, but with other underwater people.
Oh, okay. Cool. The assassin retcon was an interesting one.
That was done by Jeff Johns.
Yeah. It was a great way to take these characters, kind of like Sue, these characters who were perhaps like poor generalizations of, the emotionality of women and stuff like that. And they really kind of transformed them later on in these modern ages into these like more complex, capable characters. I really like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Mera is like the poster child for that, I think.
Yeah, so is Sue. Okay, yeah, so now that we got the histories out of the way, we're going to go ahead and go into our speculative scenario where we talk about how we think this fight would actually go. Now, we don't set many rules for this match, save for the fact that when they appear and see each other on the battlefield, they don't know anything about each other, but they do know that each other are threats. They start off about 50 yards apart, and the location in which they fight typically we don't describe because it actually has no bearing on the stats that we use to run the simulations.
Right, because it's a non-environment, because we don't account for environmental stats. They play too big of a variable on a match.
Right, because if this match took place on land, Invisible Woman has the advantage. If it took place underwater, Mera obviously has the advantage. So we kind of assume there's like neutral state where both characters have access to their full potential of powers.
Right.
And if that's kind of hard to imagine, I guess what you can suppose for this match is that maybe the air is really humid, and that's how Mera is able to create her hard water constructs. Or maybe just imagine like they're fighting in a few inches of water, and Mera is able to pull her constructs up from the ground that way.
Yeah, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it
too much. It's all about stats. It's not about environment.
Right.
So, let's go ahead and get started. The characters appear on the battlefield 50 yards apart. Who goes first?
Mera, because I think she has a much more warrior-like demeanor than Invisible Woman.
That's probably true, yeah. Okay.
So Mera starts off by gathering all this water around her and forming a hard water torpedo that she fires right off at Invisible Woman.
Okay, so Invisible Woman deflects it by throwing up a force field, and the water, dissipates across her invisible energy field.
Okay, so Mera does not automatically know that Invisible Woman creates invisible
force fields, because they're invisible, right? So she probably assumes that maybe she just broke it apart telepathically or something with her mind.
Right.
Yeah. But then again, the torpedo would splash against the force field, and it would leave water droplets that would start falling down from the force field.
Okay,
right?
Perfect.
That's
cool.
what you would assume.
Yeah.
Like on a glass window.
Okay, so Mera has an idea of what Invisible Woman does now.
And they both kind of have an idea of what they do now, because Mera showed that she has hydrokinesis.
Yeah. So Mera creates a whirlpool around her, and she uses that whirlpool to launch her into the air towards Invisible Woman. And while she's in the air, she gathers more water and forms these swords, and she's aiming for Invisible Woman.
Okay, so Invisible Woman sees Mera flying through the air toward her, and what she does is she takes that force field that she had constructed to block the water torpedo, and she shoots it like a huge wall up against Mera flying through the air. So it slams and breaks apart all of the water constructs that Mera created, and it slams her as well out of the air.
So she just crashes into an invisible window.
Yeah, she crashes into a window like a bird, basically.
And then she just slides down slowly. She's like, oh.
But she's durable,
Right. Okay. So she lands back on the ground, and then that's when she reaches towards Invisible Woman, and she pulls the water out of her body.
Okay, so Invisible Woman feels the water being drawn out of her. She starts feeling pretty dehydrated, So what she does is she forms this protective barrier around her entire body, a force field that keeps the water inside where it can't be drawn out.
Okay, but still, it's pretty painful.
It's skin tight. I mean, yeah, she probably feels a little bit sick. So while she's recuperating with this invisible force field around her, probably, it probably feels like a bad hangover or something like that. She turns herself invisible to protect herself from detection by Mera while she's dealing with the severe dehydration thing.
Okay, so Mera saw her go invisible, so she knows that she's still, in the area. Maybe she thinks she teleported. Either way, she's gonna try and find her. So she, increases the density of the water vapor in the air and kind of levitates it so it doesn't fall like rain. Okay? So now there's all kinds of water droplets everywhere, and she could see them move when Invisible Woman moves.
Oh, shit.
Yep.
Oh, that totally renders her invisibility useless.
Yeah, it does.
Dang.
Yeah,
okay.
It does.
So then what does Mera do at that point?
That's when Mera channels some water and creates a water octopus tentacle and grabs Invisible Woman and lifts her into the air and slams her into the ground.
Okay, so Invisible Woman protects herself with another force field from getting to her as she slams into the ground. And what she does is she stays invisible, and Mera tries to find her again using this water droplet technique, but then all of a sudden, all of the water droplets around her turn invisible.
What?
Because Invisible Woman can turn other objects invisible. So now she truly can't be seen because Mera has no form of detecting her with that visual trick that she had.
Okay.
So Mira's like looking around, wondering like what's going on. And then all of a sudden she gets slammed down into the ground by this huge like invisible column, kind of like a sledgehammer.
Oh, jeez. Okay, but I mean, Mera, her Atlantean physiology, she's really durable. Okay, she can withstand the pressures of the bottom of the ocean.
Well, so can Invisible Woman. She goes down to visit Namor all the time, and she's protecting herself with her force fields.
Yeah, that's just bad science, though.
Okay. Really? You're gonna talk about that science?
Okay, so what Mera does is she channels some water around her and like kind of like lubricates herself so that she's able to slip out from under the column.
Okay.
And then she's just kind of like sliding and slipping around the environment.
Like Iceman, like a water slide or something like that?
Exactly. Okay. So then what she does is she forms like a hard water grid all around her. And she just moves this grid around the environment.
A grid?
Yeah. And she knows that
The grid's invisible now. And then all of a sudden, she gets hit again by like this like wrecking ball, huge spherical object. She just gets plowed into the air.
Okay. All right, so she gets knocked to the ground, and she's pretty pissed off now, and she's angry, and so she channels some more water, and she forms like this hard water armor around her to protect her even more.
Okay.
So like surprise attacks won't hurt her as badly anymore.
Okay, that was a good move, yeah. But Invisible Woman's gonna try anyway, so at this point she summons this invisible club that swings sideways right into Mera.
You think that, but when Mera was forming her armor, she was also forming this really thin but really hard layer of water that is like it's invisible.
Oh, she creates her own invisible force field.
Exactly.
Oh, yeah, she could probably do that, huh?
So it slams into the water barrier, and she's like, aha! And then she like explodes her armor off her in like a whole bunch of like 1,000 little spikes in all directions.
Okay.
Which run into Invisible Woman, revealing her location. And so now that she knows her location, that's when Mera summons a whole bunch of water around her in like a giant bubble of water and then pulls an Invisible Woman towards her as she's forming like a huge water spike on her arm.
Okay. And at this point, Invisible Woman creates her own suit of armor, which is created out of like invisible force fields, right? So she goes in with her own spike and they start like sword fighting.
Okay, except that Mera is a much better fighter than Invisible Woman.
I mean, Invisible Woman's had some training, but yeah, you're probably
not
right.
like Mera's training.
Okay, yeah, that's right, because she's an assassin, trained assassin.
Exactly.
Right.
What Mera does is she sweeps Invisible Woman's feet from underneath her so that she falls on the ground. Then she uses Invisible Woman's own bodily water to like flood the invisible armor.
Oh shit.
Yeah.
Oh,
so
okay.
now it's like all around her mouth.
No. Okay, so Invisible Woman just ditches the armor at that point.
Okay. But now she's also dehydrated.
Again?
Yes.
All right, so she's like dying of dehydration or whatever. Okay.
Yeah.
She reaches out toward Mera. If Mera's gonna attack her internally, she's gonna do the same thing, and she's gonna create like this force bubble inside of Mera's brain that causes her head to explode.
Can she do that?
Yeah, she can do that.
What?
Yeah.
Okay, but Mera's brain is like really durable because it's Atlantean.
All right, so either that might be a good place to leave off because either Invisible Woman dies of dehydration or she manages to pull off this, head explosion technique.
Yeah, I think that's a good place to stop.
Yeah, we'll go ahead and end the scenario there, and we'll go ahead and run the stats in our 1,000 simulations and find out who the winner is.
It was a fun match.
Yeah, I like that one a lot.
Yeah. So we kind of learned that Mera can kind of do everything that Invisible Woman does except for turn invisible.
And render other objects invisible.
Right.
But yeah, she get defensively, like with the force fields and things like that, her power set is extremely similar to Invisible Woman's.
Invisible Woman is probably like the most powerful defensive superhero in all of comics.
Oh, I mean, the things that I've seen her do in some of the Fantastic Four issues, it's insane how much of a powerhouse she is.
Right.
But in terms of like physical stats and stuff like that, I can't say that she's as strong or as good of a fighter or as naturally durable as Mera.
Right.
But I would go so far as to say that she's actually more powerful than Mera offensively with how strong her force fields are.
Damage level wise, I would agree. There's no doubt that Invisible Woman is powerful. I mean, she could protect an entire city and probably destroy it too. But Mera, she could destroy a city as well, with like a tidal wave. And she's defeated the entire Justice League before. And where Invisible Woman can make you combust from within, Mera can do the exact same thing using the water in your body. They're comparable power levels.
I'll also say that Invisible Woman has the edge evasively, because not only can she erect the shields, and Mera can do that as well, but she can hide easier than Mera can.
That being said, Invisible Woman is not as well-rounded as Mera, and I think that really served to Mera's advantage in the stats.
Yeah, they go back and forth. So let's go ahead and get the results.
Cool.
So the winner between Mera and Invisible Woman is Mera.
Yes! Yes!
It was actually Mera. I did not see that coming. Mera won 677 out of 1,000 matches against Invisible Woman.
So about 2/3, a little over 2/3.
Just over 2/3. It was very surprising to me. Despite, Invisible Woman being more powerful and a better evasive person, Mera had her in almost every other category, including strength, including fighting skill, durability, and a lot of the more physical stats, as well as fighting. And that's kind of what put her over the edge. In everything else, Mera was comparable to Invisible Woman. Stats-wise, Mera is a more impressive specimen.
Exactly.
So, damn it. That doesn't make any sense to me. Anyway, that's what the numbers came out with. We definitely got to have a complete overhaul of the entire system, obviously. For the next time, so that this doesn't happen again and Marvel doesn't lose again.
The next duel is definitely going to be unique. We'll definitely going to do it a different way. It's still a surprise as to what we're doing for our 100th episode, but again, it's only 2 episodes away. Our next episode, we will be reviewing Justice League Throne of Atlantis.
Again, in our countdown to the Aquaman review that's coming out later next month.
Right.
Look forward to that next week. And don't forget to visit dynamicduel.com, and if you go there, you'll get links to all of our social media accounts, including Instagram and Facebook and Twitter. Definitely follow us on Instagram if you're on there, because I think our Instagram is pretty sweet.
It is, and you'll get to see the artwork that we will be auctioning off for our holiday episode. This year, we're going to be pitting Detective Chimp against Howard the Duck. And so we commissioned artwork from a very talented artist named Shannon V. Sapinter, who you could follow on Instagram at Art of SVS.
Right. And all the proceeds from this art auction will be going to a charity called Women Helping Women, which focuses on crisis intervention and prevention advocacy for gender-based violence. If you're into Howard the Duck or Detective Chimp or both, or someone nerdy enough to want to own either of these pieces of art, go ahead and check us out on Instagram and definitely bid in the auction next month.
Yeah, and that goes live when our 100th episode goes live.
Right. I think that does it for this episode, and we will talk to you guys next week.
Up and away.
True believers.